our fault when anything bad in baseball.
Guy walks 5 with the bases loaded and someone at you. This is your fault.
It's my fault. And with that, let's go ahead and just start the world's most dangerous youth baseball podcast. I'm your host, Evan Morgan, Director of Baseball at Driveline, founder of the Driveline Academy. Standard intro, we're just going to discard this time because, we're just going to jump in hot. Joined as per usual by my brother, my partner, my co-host, Driveline Academy Assistant Director, Driveline Academy International Man of Mystery, Driveline Academy 15U Black Head Coach, and just like the best head coach in the world, Jeremy Tectiel.
Some people are saying.
Some people say. Housekeeping. And you know what? We're going to not do the standard housekeeping as well because the housekeeping that we need to add to things is Driveline Academy Flex. Mm-hmm. For anybody that has missed the last couple episodes where we've talked about Flex is your child's opportunity to come train at Driveline and get some of the signal that we can provide to you about where you are right now, where you need to go, and the stuff you need to do to get there. It takes advantage of our markerless motion capture stuff. So that's basically the mechanism that we can get those type of biomechanics, force plates to calculate kind of athletic production, force production, etc. And then you get a meeting with a trainer, and that trainer goes, here's where you are, here's the stuff you got to work on, here's the plan over the next 30 days to make that happen. It's a longitudinal relationship. You can do the Driveline Academy snapshot, which is a one-time thing. That's just the assessment, and that includes 30 days of the Flex experience. You get 30 days of programming. You can come in for weekly hitting groups. You can do skill camps if we have those running. Or you can commit to Flex. And certainly the way that we're kind of pricing these things, we are trying to not so subtly suggest that the best way that your athlete can get better is if they participate in Flex and not just the snapshot. And it's just every month you're having that meeting with their trainer. You're in that constant communication loop. You're doing weekly hitting stuff if your schedule allows. You're getting programming on the hitting side, on the throwing side, on the strength side. We're putting you in touch with our nutritionist. We are getting you recruiting help if that's applicable, because that's a huge thing that we're weaponizing for our Driveline Academy kids with field level. Driveline Academy Flex is just our ability to finally knock the wall down for kids who want to be able to use this loop of data-driven training and get better without leaving their current team. Used to always just be a thing that you couldn't do if you weren't on a team. Flex changes that. So Driveline Academy Flex is the monthly thing. It's a 6-month minimum. Driveline Academy Snapshot is just the one-time 90-minute assessment. Driveline Academy Flex, Driveline Academy Snapshots, you can find that stuff at drivelinebaseball.com. Other than that, axbet.com, code DL20 will get you 20% off of all of your bat speed training products. Or game bats. They have all that stuff too. Youth Underload Smash Bat and the Youth Power Bat are out right now. If you find your team is maybe not hitting the way that you want going into the summer, well, we've got some tools you can use to be able to train just outright bat speed with the Power Bat, or do some super maximal bat speed, which means moving the bat really fast and faster than you ordinarily would with the Underload Smash Bat, but also because it's a skinny barrel, you focus on barrel accuracy as well, aka just like good hitting, moving the bat fast, hitting the ball flush. And then the Big Daddy, Skills to Skill Complete Youth Baseball Training Manual. We are zooming into 600 people, 600 sales, which is awesome. It's just like the complete outline of everything we could possibly give you about how to run a great youth baseball experience that revolves around the skills at scale, the stuff that matters the most over the long term for your player or your team. It's going to give you all the tools you could possibly ask for. Housekeeping complete.
The house is kept.
The house is kept. The house is kept. Heck of a weekend. We were down, or I was down with you for some of our games for some of our younger kids this weekend. Had a wedding then on Saturday night. Shout out to my brother Brando for finally tying the knot. We got my whole crew of my college buddies together again, which is always a good time. Let's see.
Shout out to the state of Washington. It was beautiful this weekend.
No.
The sun found me.
Caveat. What he said is just that's disinformation. The Seattle summer is terrible. You should definitely not move here. Yeah. We try to keep this like a well-guarded secret.
I didn't realize we were Iceland. It's terrible here. All the time. It's just there. It is perpetually monsooning.
Yeah, it's definitely not beautiful.
Yeah.
It's definitely just not one of those be outside or on your deck at it's 75 at 7 o'clock in the morning and it's just gorgeous at night. And it's
if you're watching on a visual medium, this is definitely makeup and not sunburn.
Yeah. Definitely didn't get my first little bit of color on the weekend. Dropped my bike this morning, which was tight, in the driveway while it was on the stand, which is the second time I've done that in 25 years. So that felt like a real idiot. Definitely, for sure, took a big divot out of my leg because I tried to catch it, and it's a 400-pound bike, so that was tight. But yeah, and I think that's like where I wanted to start. So I want to read off some game scores. And when we talk about this stuff in youth baseball, we always are going to like put our stuff out first, right? Like, so I just want to read some game scores. So first game Saturday, a loss, 24-1. Second game Saturday, a loss, 12-0. So at that point, 1 run scored, 36 allowed. Not a great start.
Not a great start.
And I've these are the type of game experiences that I think parents understandably get jumpy about.
It's a long day.
Man, it's a long, tough day. But then let's go to Sunday. So Sunday, first game, 10-6 win.
Nope. That was the second game.
I'm sorry. That's right. These are backwards in the order. So first game on Sunday, 16-0 win.
Yeah.
Oh, our tides changed. Second game on Sunday, 10-6 win. So now all of a sudden we scored 36 runs, or I'm sorry, 26 runs, 27 runs in 3 games or 4 games, which is okay. Like, we're in a good place. Yeah. 8-ish runs a game, right about. And then the final game on the weekend is a loss, 12-0. Our loss.
Yeah.
And because I went down on Saturday to see it myself a little bit, and you were there all weekend.
Yeah. So we should probably clarify a little bit more, because most of the time we talk about teams on the pod, it's probably my team, right? This was not. This is one of our 13 new teams.
One of our 13 teams, and of that batch of kids, it's the one where
it's our developmental team.
Yes,
it is our developmental 13U team.
And I know that sometimes when we talk about a developmental team, I understand people that kind of go like, well, that's just a cop out. It's a cop out to just say that those kids are developmental, which is to say not very good at baseball right now. But that's why I wanted to kind of frame it this way, right? In like what I think is extreme variance in game outcomes, because that's what those scores are, right? It's like wild variance. You're getting your doors blown off 24-1, and then you win the next game 16-0.
Yeah. So there's obviously, we talk this, if we fed all of our episodes to the transcription machine, it would not surprise me if context is one of the words that shows up more frequently than most other words.
Yeah.
The context of the situation is it was a tournament weekend. The first team we played, that 24-1 loss, was a team that had dropped down into a lower competition bracket because they, I'll just be very honest on the podcast. I talked to their coach. They had just come back from playing in Arizona. It did not go great, taking his 13U team down to Arizona. They needed some wins for the game changer record. So we're gonna drop down a little bit in levels of competition, get some feel good wins. It makes sense on the surface if you are being generous, right? Like,
I understand that decision.
Yeah. Our kids bear the brunt of that, right? Where we're trying to learn and improve and get better at baseball, and we're running into a buzzsaw that is not a developmental team, right?
Yeah.
A majors level team that should not be playing probably AAA, let alone like a AA level.
So that's the thing. I want to take this outside of the baseball sense a little bit. Imagine these were test scores, right? Imagine that this is a cohort of 12 to 20 kids in a classroom, and these are your test scores. The first 2 times they take this test, they fail wildly, like to a degree that it's like, were you even in the classroom when we were teaching this unit? Right.
Well, all right. So the second game is that's where I almost want to add more context.
Okay.
So First game, 24-1. It was 24-0 going into the bottom of the second.
Yeah.
We were the home team. Yeah. We put up a run. We went 1-2-3 in the top of the third.
Yeah.
And then we didn't score. And so the last 3 frames, we won 1-0.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
We carried that well into the next game. It was 2-0 in the 5th inning. This is like classic youth game territory, right?
Yeah.
2-0 in the 5th inning. They had played back-to-back games. It's over 80 for the first time all year in Washington, so they're not used to the heat. Wheels come off a little bit. We had 2 pitchers. Our starter came out. The next 2 pitchers were tired, struggled to throw strikes.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you look up, it's 12-0, and the game's over. That was a tight ball game. We stacked about 5 good innings on top of each other in between those 2 games. That's the context that, like, when we're talking in the post-game huddle, that's what we're focusing on.
100%.
Right? Not that last inning where things got away from us, but, it's been a rough, that team had not yet won a game this year.
Yeah.
Right? So to not win a game and then come in and lose 24-1.
Yeah.
And then be close and lose 12-0, you got to pull that context out for the kids and, like, hey, you stacked 5 good innings on top of each other today. That is a huge start. If we can do this consecutively in one game, we're right there. Guys, like that was a really good team we played. We didn't make any errors. We threw a lot of strikes, and they hit barrels all over the field that like just weren't catchable. It's not like we were making errors, right?
So like that first game, in a testing sense, it feels like it's like if it was a weighted test and the first question on the test represented like 80% of the grade.
Yeah, it's like a third grader, and you're asking like a trigonometry question.
Sure. Right? So you get that one wrong, and then you nail the rest of the test, but like the weighting of it affects you.
Yeah.
And in that second game, it's like it's a test in a classroom, and the kids have been testing for a while, and they're going and they're going and they're going, and then you just like let in like a dozen bees.
Yeah.
Right. You introduce some chaos, you introduce some stress in the environment, and the wheels fall off. But then in the third and fourth test, they succeed wildly. In
the 16-0 game,
yeah,
was also 2-0.
Yeah,
going into the 5th inning.
Yep.
And instead, now this time we were the team that benefited from the other team having the wheels come off a little bit.
Yeah, and we scored 7 and then 7.
7
right?
and 7.
Yeah. So context. This type of stuff at like the 13 or 14U level is just wild. And like I'll have to throw some editing in here post game, because there's a picture that was posted about like some 13U international soccer tournament. And if you look, there's one player and there's the other. So for you,
it's honestly what Saturday morning looked like.
Yeah. So for you, dear listener, who may not be joining us on an audiovisual platform, and I'll throw that picture somewhere in the blank space between Jeremy and I. There's one young man here who is wider than both of the officials, because there's him compared to the 2 officials.
Yeah, he's taller than one of them and way thicker than both of them.
And you'll also note that he has like a full-blown mustache.
Full-blown.
And then the kid on the other side, who's like barely at waist level, or his shoulders are barely at waist level of the 2 officials. The game of baseball, if you define the experience for kids in this strict calendar relative timeline thing, is always going to have this type of variance. And that type of variance is going to show when it comes to game scores.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, a lot of times this, to me, and maybe this is just, I'm drinking my own Kool-Aid, but I think for me, it's why I lean so heavily towards the skill side. Because if this type of variance is involved in the game environment, and we're treating that signal as if it's like determinative, but it's not.
Right.
It's not. Some of these kids on the calendar are the same age, but their development is wildly different, both positively. I don't even want to say positively, but like both advanced and Well, I guess I would say the R word normally, but I can't. Yeah, you can't even use that word even in like its intended. You know, they're. I don't want to say deficient either because they're just delayed. They're delayed. They're delayed in just like physiological development.
Yeah. I mean, it was so the field we played at. There are 4 fields.
Yep.
There's 2 next to each other, and then there's like a pretty steep hill.
Yeah.
Followed by 2 lower fields. We were on one of the upper fields. When the game ended, all the boys are filing out of the dugout. They're grabbing their stuff. They clean the dugout. And then they sit on the hill so that the coach can give like the post-game speech. And as they're sitting on the hill and I'm sitting with them, they are watching the game going on on the bottom. And just like with awe, they're watching this game. And you can hear them talking about, how big the kids are or whatever. One of them turns, and he was on Driveline 12U last year, right? Not on 13U this year. He went to a different organization, but he was with us last year. So then, and he was on the same team as some of those boys that are sitting there. So then they realized, oh my God, that's 13U.
Yeah.
These kids look like monsters, and they're 13U. And listening to them sit and talk about how much further they are behind than those kids, but not in a negative way.
Right.
And that's a pretty glaring difference that like their smallest kid is at least 20 pounds bigger than our biggest kid.
Yeah.
And like, that's why, like, that makes sense. It was just another example of like kids pick up on things faster than adults do sometimes.
Yeah. And again, I think this to me just kind of doubles down on this question about how valid is the test, right? How valid is the test when we're in this type of timeline for variance? And again, when you're telling me that, saying that a team is like developmental is a little bit of a cop out. I understand the point of what you're saying, but I'm going to push back a little bit because ultimately I think when you have those kids who at 13 years old and a collection of kids at 13 years old who just, if you batch them all together, they're like bottom quartile for size and athleticism of all these kids.
Yeah.
Just in this specific moment in time, not forever, but now. And then they're going to be competing against other kids who, again, there's all sorts of contextual variance that they might experience, that these teams they're going to compete against, they might run out of pitching. They might, everybody can have a bad day, et cetera, et cetera. But like for the stuff that like is a little bit non-malleable in the current term, which is just like physiological presentation, right? I don't think it's unfair, and we're not trying to like castigate that group of kids to say that they're developmental. They are where they are.
Yeah.
And if that's true, and I'm trying to say, okay, what's the best thing for these kids in the long term? I don't know how you don't lean towards going, okay, if the physiological stuff is going to be like, basically I can't navigate around that. The stuff that I can control is lay a foundation for skill. I don't know why you don't go that path. I don't know why you wouldn't go the skill path. Because if you just go the game optimization path, I know what it looks like to train those kids. Right?
Yeah, and you're still probably not going to win most of those games. There's only so much you can game optimize.
100%. It's a slightly faster horse. In racing against top fuel funny cars. It's a slightly faster horse. If you take all those kids and go like, all right, well, I'm not going to try to improve your athleticism.
Yep.
And if I'm going to try to improve your athleticism, that means I have to spend a consistent and constant amount of time improving the characteristics that are going to influence that stuff. And that means to a degree, because I don't have infinite time, I'm not going to spend time optimizing for the game result now. You're going to have this type of variance in the test.
Yeah. And it's difficult to go through a season like that and not have the context of, but look where you've come skill-wise
Yep.
since October. Because like these losses are going to happen. and being able to say, but like, yeah, we're still getting better, guys. Like, yeah, it may not feel like it, and that's because development isn't linear.
Yeah.
But like every one of you has gotten a ton better since the beginning of the year.
Yep.
And like, we're close, guys. We're close. And I know this can be unfun sometimes to get your butt kicked like this, but like, we're not terribly far away from being the team that kicks their butts.
And to that end, I would say that like you have a couple things that point to that light at the end of the tunnel. And one of those is a loss. The loss where you're chasing 2 until stuff goes sideways.
100%.
Man, that's light at the end of the tunnel.
That's light at the end of the tunnel.
In the same way that the 16-0 win is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. And to shout out, I'll give him shout outs. So we have one outstanding young man on third. Well, we have many of them, but one of them, the second game ends on Saturday. All the kids are, like I said, kneeling on the hill or sitting on the hill. I'm there. Coach is standing in front of the group. Before she can say anything, this young man raises his hand and is standing. Everyone else is kneeling or sitting, and he's standing. And coach calls on Felix. Shout out Felix Bliss. And he gives this rousing, impassioned speech of, guys, we're going to win. We are so close. Look what we just did. We almost did it. We are that close. It takes kids like that who understand that development isn't linear. And absent that, it makes that role of the coach that much harder to really get that through to the kids, because even with the skill side developmental gains, the key point is you need a coach who is still going to be able to make that dugout a fun atmosphere.
Yep.
When you're losing 24-0, do you have someone in that dugout that's still going to keep it light and fun and bring that context in back? Because the context matters a lot less, honestly, in that specific moment in time when they're losing 24-0. If you've ever been in a 13U dugout and they're losing 24-0, try telling them that they've gained 2 miles an hour of bat speed since October.
See how that lands.
And see if that gets them to stop crying. You need a coach who's going to make that environment fun and engaging no matter what happens.
And I'm so glad that you're going there. And just so everybody knows, like a lot of times when we do the pod, I don't tell Jeremy where we're going. I come in here with like,
never. If you didn't know that, if you watch, he's got a computer always. I just come in. Sometimes I got a drink. Sometimes I have an energy drink. Sometimes a water bottle. Nothing today.
So
that, but yeah, I don't prepare for this. Maybe I should. I don't know.
So I come in here with like a rough tapestry of like the stuff we want to talk about, but I think the thing that we're getting into is I think there's 2 layers to this. If we understand that it's hard to take good, valid signal from the test because you're going to have this type of variance that just like the signal is really wonky. Mm-hmm. And we understand that like in this current moment in time, there's going to be this wild physiological variance that's like the undercurrent of all this stuff. The reason that parents get sketchy and rattled about these type of game environments is because you're worried about like how does this experience internalize stuff for your own player? Like that's the thing that you're trying to guard against. And what you just got into was both like a player who is like, we're there, and a player who can see that light at the end of the tunnel even coming out of a loss, and the need for coaches to be able to put fuel on that, right?
Whether or not he could.
Right.
Honestly,
right.
You give that kid truth serum. I don't know. Do you actually believe what you're saying?
Right.
That's a leader.
Right. Yeah. So I'm so glad you went there because this dovetails into literally the other thing I had on my outline, which is like this post that Steve Magnus put out. Steve wrote The Hard Thing About Hard Things. He's got a new book out right now. I think it's Do Hard Things. You should probably check it out. You should buy the Skills Go Complete Youth Baseball Training Manual first, but then you should check out Steve's book. Anyways, there's a really interesting study from a weightlifting standpoint about the role of self-talk. So in one study on lifting weights, goal-directed self-talk, quote, enhanced performance by 43% once an RPE of 8 was reached. RPE meaning rate of perceived exertion, usually out of a 10, right? Resulting in 63% more repetitions and demonstrated more efficient muscle activation patterns. So now, weightlifting isn't baseball, right? We all understand that. However, there's some research that would suggest that like the way that you talk to yourself, the way that you internalize the stuff, the framework and context that you construct as an individual relative to your athletic pursuits has to some degree positive or negative effect on your output. Well, it's just that thing.
Yeah.
It's a 13-year-old standing up in front of a room full of kids or a team full of kids and saying, we're right there. It's a coach saying, hey, you came out, first and third, 2 dead, and you struck out on a hittable pitch. And that kid's walking back to the dugout and you're like, I trust you.
Mm-hmm.
I trust you. You're right there.
Something interesting. I went and saw many of our teams this weekend because, that's what I do.
Yeah.
So I saw 13s, I saw 12s, and last night I went to our 15U second team. So obviously I know these kids really well. They train at the same time as my team for the most part.
Yep.
I've known most of these kids for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
At the 13U game earlier in the day, there is another fine, upstanding young gentleman by the name of Leo Skywalker.
Come, babe.
Had himself a heck of a day on Sunday. Had already hit 2 doubles and drove in a bunch of runs, and he came up for, I think it was either his 3rd or 4th at bat, and just the most aggressive plate approach in the world, which is great. We're in on that.
You love to see it. And
he gets a pitch near his eyes, and I can't describe the swing he took. It was like he tried to like chop the ball down. Whatever happened, he hit the ball about 16 feet in the air.
Okay.
Right around like no man's land between pitcher and second base.
Sure.
Runner was on third. Guy scores. He's safe at first. He turns to the dugout and goes, "Hey guys, I got my new double celebration." And then mimics himself taking that swing that he just took. That looked so ugly, but drove in the run, right? All the kids are laughing. He's having a great time. Fast forward to 6 hours later, I'm at the 15U game.
Yeah.
One of our young ball players, Asher, gets a single to start the inning. I'm coaching first. Subbing in to coach first. He rounds first. Turns around and comes back. As he's coming back, looks me in the eye and goes, "That's the world's worst base hit." Like totally seriously, no smile on his face, just like, that's the world's worst base hit.
Yeah.
Talking about negative self-talk versus positive self-talk.
Yeah.
You had one kid getting 2 extremely ugly swings. Yeah. One of them, "This is my new double celebration."
Yeah.
Why not? Right? It worked. I drove in a run. We're all having fun out here. This is how you positive self-talk yourself.
Yeah.
And then there's the other one of, "Wow, I'm terrible. Dude, you just got a hit. You let off the inning with a hit and you scored."
Yeah.
He wound up scoring. Like, and your first takeaway is a negative takeaway, a negative thought. That's so tough.
Yeah.
Like, this must be a really hard game for you to play if you, even when you do well, you immediately are just like, "Wow, how did that happen?"
Yeah.
Can't believe I got a hit there.
Well, I'm like 98% confident that if I remember this correctly, the reason that all this like self-talk is important is, and again, I don't know if this is just like some bro science stuff, but when I heard someone, I think, discussing the study, they were saying that the reason it's important is because your brain doesn't really differentiate between sarcasm and prescriptive.
Right. If all you're thinking is negative, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Man, I'm trying to think about how to approach this.
If you're on the bump as a pitcher, and your defense has just made a couple errors behind you, and all you can think of is, "Man, if they put the ball into play, my team is not converting this into an out," you're probably not going to throw strikes to that next guy.
Well, right. And again, there was something that passed on my old Instagram this weekend. And it was somebody talking about Trevor Hoffman. And I know I've seen this clip going around, and I think I just kind of like passed it by because I wasn't in the headspace to really think about the stuff. But I happened to, it caught my attention this weekend and watching, and did David Wells play for the Padres at the end of his career? Yeah. Okay, so he played for the Padres for sure. I don't know if it might have been towards the end. Okay, that
I
makes
think it was
sense
probably towards the
because
end.
that makes sense because I'm pretty sure it was David Wells. And he's talking about Trevor Hoffman. And Wells, I think at that point, or whoever it was, apologize if it wasn't David Wells and I'm screwing this whole thing up, but he was saying that at that point he was like the setup guy for Hoffman. And he came out.
It wasn't David Wells.
Okay.
He wouldn't come out of the bullpen.
He was kind of like fat and bald.
Well, that sounds like David Wells.
David Wells. I don't know. I'll find it. Anyways, he was saying that, like, he came out into the 8th and like he was one of those days he just had nothing. They had a 3-run lead. He gives up 2. And then Hoffman comes out in the 9th to close with a 1-run lead. And he had nothing. 1, 2, 3 out. And he and Trevor Hoffman, Hall of Famer, have a conversation after the game. And I guess Hoffman came up to him and he was like, how'd you feel out there? And he was like, man, I had nothing. And Hoffman goes, yeah, like, I didn't have anything either. But the difference is that, like, they knew you didn't have anything. And I'm Trevor Hoffman. I can't show that. And what he was saying, he was like, Hoffman's whole persona at that point, it was kind of an act. It's like it's performative.
Oh yeah.
The internal voice might be, my stuff stinks today. But I think there's again, like a little ray of light there that's like, my stuff stinks today, but I'm not going to let you see that.
Yeah. My stuff stinks today, but guess what doesn't? My ability to compete.
Yeah.
The second I leave that bullpen door.
Yeah. And I think we know a fair number of athletes who have done like really special things in a variety of sports where like their self-talk is horrible.
Yes.
Like really, really horrible. And I don't know if, you want to go down like the George Brett, path, or like the Mickey Mantle path of guys who just like lived in abject terror of judgment by their fathers, or, I think there's a number of guys who just like the internal voice is like, you stink, you stink, you stink. And I mean, obviously we're keeping it PG for how that's framed.
And it works for some guys, right?
Yeah.
They're outliers.
And
that kind of thing can work, and it doesn't impact their actual confidence to be able to go out and do the task.
Yeah. And I get that there are guys who are able to do that. I think you're right that it is better to treat those people as outliers, though.
That's what they are, yeah.
Because I think most kids, in so much as we have the opportunity in youth baseball, would be much better served being taught that positive side of things instead of the other.
Right, because most professional athletes that I've met, which, are mostly baseball players.
Yeah.
But I did go to Minnesota, so shout out all you hockey players that I know. Are irrationally confident.
Yeah.
At all times. Bordering on like psychopathic irrational confidence. Because you fail so much that like you have to be so irrationally confident in yourself that you're not going to fail the next time.
Yeah.
Regardless of all the results that have happened.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of the gambler's fallacy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and again, especially if you're doing the work.
Or I guess it is the gambler's fallacy.
Yes. Yes. But especially if you're doing the work to earn that confidence. And like, again, there was like, I think Danny sent me this video, or did I send it to him? I don't know, but it's Kyrie Irving, who, some hot takes about, but whatever.
Man can play basketball.
Real special basketball player. And I think he must have been on LeBron's On the Shop at some point. I don't know where it looked like it was from that, but he was talking about playing basketball, and he was like, two things that really caught my eye. One is he was talking about it. He was like, I told myself when I was in the 4th grade that I was going to make it to the NBA. And I said it out loud in the mirror. And then he talks about kind of like all this stuff in the journey. And he's like, at this point, like the court is my canvas. He's like, and it's just art. He's like, and I'm constantly trying to push the boundaries of that canvas to perform as best as I can. And I was like, man, I would love to see a wave of young baseball players think about it that way. Because I think a lot of them, it doesn't surprise me that we have, again, all these issues of participation loss and retention loss when there's this wild variance in the test that might not leave you predisposed to think about it as like a canvas and think about it as something where I can apply these ideas of positive self-talk to actually push myself to perform better. You play 13-year-olds that are 24 months ahead of you in terms of physiological development. This stinks. This stinks. We stink. I stink. I don't have a future in this game because of the feeling of the weight of the test.
Yep.
Then you got Kyrie Irving over there, who's just like, I'm an artist. Man, can you, framing sport competition as like art? That's the opposite.
Yeah.
You might create a shitty painting. Okay, new canvas. Go do it again.
Right.
And to me, again, all of this is just like, I'm not trying to drink my own Kool-Aid and be all Jonestown-y up here, but like, I don't know how you can't lean towards the developmental perspective on youth sport broadly, and specifically in baseball when you see this type of stuff play out.
No question.
And the thing that I'll like to really like bring this all the way home is Noah Corey.
I've heard of this man.
Shout out to Noah Corey. Noah Corey is a kid on our 15U. He's part of that group. Noah came into us as a 13-year-old who had all the size in the world and didn't throw that hard. Like, just, especially not relative to, his height. Like, and I know, I mean, I've personally experienced coaching kids who, when they were younger, they're big and long, and baseball coaches would look at him and they're like, oh, he's going to be a dude. He's going to be a dude. But like, all the wishing in the world is going to change the fact that, like, if your force production goes up and you just aren't that good, you're just tall.
Correct.
Like, I mean, you might be getting an additional, I don't know, foot of extension relative to your peers, but that's not going to turn 73 into 83.
Or 88.6.
Or 88.6. And that's where Noah comes in. So Noah came into us 2 years ago.
Year and a half.
Yeah, I guess a year and a half. Because
we're 2 years at this point. I mean, we're almost done with the season.
And he was like low sevens, right? He was low sevens. He was tall, but low sevens.
Yeah, it was solid for a 14-year-old.
Yeah,
like a 13 going on 14. It was solid for that age. It was not necessarily like we had kids who threw hard.
Yes,
like he wasn't our hardest thrower at the age group.
Yep. Noah didn't play on our quote unquote top or most competitive 15U or 14U team last year. He was still piecing some stuff together. And by no means am I saying any of this to suggest that he's still not 15 years old and all of the variance that may entail. However, last Wednesday, was that on Friday?
It was Wednesday.
It was Wednesday. Last Wednesday. Had his assessment bullpen. And again, I did a thread on this from our Driveline Youth social. You can find us at Driveline Youth basically anywhere, talking about the idea behind an assessment bullpen for us is to figure out what your stuff's going to look like in game. It's we're trying to throw competitive levels of intent. We try to figure out what the ceiling is. And we critically wanted to get that done for a lot of our kids that are coming out of the high school season to see what their stuff looks like now versus, what did it look like in February before we sent them off to high school.
Yep.
We need to be able to make informed decisions over the summer about normative output, about tracking progress and all this other stuff. So that's we roll the assessment bullpen. And Noah, from an average thrown ball velocity back in November of 22 of 77.6. His average fastball velocity last Wednesday, 87.83.
Yep.
So we've gained 10 miles an hour of thrown ball in basically 2 years. Peak went from 79.5, which for him was a really firm bullet.
Yeah, it was.
Back at 22 to a peak of 88.6.
Yeah.
As a 15-year-old. Noah's team last year wasn't non-competitive, but I don't think they won as many games as they would have liked. generally fair,
100%.
right?
Yeah, they made a nice little run at the end and wound up
did.
making the finals in our league playoffs. But yeah, they definitely they were under 500. They were a average competitive team.
Yeah, I mean, and if you look at I've got some game day stuff from last January 23. Average fastball velocity was like 70.97. And because, again, a lot of kids, they're going to tune it down a little bit in the game because they're trying to throw
he's
strikes.
not throwing 88 in games, right?
He's
83, 84.
Yeah. But I guess hopefully the trail of breadcrumbs that you're following here is just that I think the best information we'll be able to get on any of these kids is only going to be determined if we keep them playing long enough.
Yeah.
Like that's just the truth. You have to get them through that window of just like wild genetic variance that's going to dominate like the 11 through 15, 16 space.
Yeah, I mean, I'll bring up Skywalker as an example again. Because that kid within the last year, like literally less than a year, the physical and mental transformation that he has gone through is pretty remarkable for a kid who hasn't really grown height-wise.
Yep.
And had a lot of confidence issues when he came to us.
Yeah.
And that kid closed it out on the mound to get them to the semifinal and hit multiple doubles, drove in a bunch of runs, was a team leader all weekend. And that's a kid that like didn't look like a very good baseball player less than a year ago.
Yeah.
Didn't look like a very good athlete less than a year ago.
Yeah.
Like easily written off.
Yeah. And I guess to me, that's the thing about it, again, to like circle back to this whole idea of like development, castigating a team as if their developmental is like a negative. It's like, but it's development towards something.
Right.
Right. If we say that they're a developmental team and they just exist in this constant state of not seeing any light at the end of the tunnel, then sure, I get that. Like I understand it. But that ignores again like the small wins.
Yeah.
It ignores the context and it ignores the path that I think. Look, not all those kids on that 13U team that had that type of variance this last weekend are all going to throw 88 when they're 15. Like that's for sure not going to be the case.
Yeah.
But again, it's the Jack Butler thing again, like we talked about last episode. Helping all of them have an age appropriate focus on skill development instead of optimizing for this competition result puts them in a position to be competitive over the long term.
Yeah. Like
it just does. And we've primarily done that in a team environment because that was the only thing that we had now. Now that we have snapshots and flex, I want to be able to open this up to more kids to be able to see the same thing that lands you both a Noah Curry and a Jack Butler, right? I want to see all of it.
Yeah.
I think when you're looking at game changer stuff and you're just evaluating the scoreboard, ask that question, like, how valid is this test? How valid is the test in assessing the progress of this group of kids if this type of variance in the outcome is what you're seeing?
Mm-hmm.
And I would offer that the answer is a little bit minimized. I don't want to say minimal because, again, over the long term, the whole point of all the skill development stuff is to win.
Right.
Like that's what we do it for. It's just a question of like, what are the wins that you're trying to optimize to gain?
Yeah.
And when are they? You want to go into your segment?
God, I've never been more happy to go into my segment.
All right.
So this past weekend, a man you may have heard of made his major league debut. His name is Paul Skeens. He was the first overall pick in the draft last year.
Pretty good at sports.
Pretty good at throwing that baseball thing. And he made his major league debut on Saturday against the Chicago Cubs. Lots of people probably watched this.
It's Skeens,
I would imagine, right? Like Skeens' debut, it was probably the most highly anticipated since Strasburg, which, I mean, we're talking Strasburg 14 years ago. He's already retired.
How many punches didn't he have like 14 punches in the first game?
I think it was like 12.
Was it 12? Okay.
Yeah. But he was unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
So very highly awaited debut. Pitches into the fifth. Top of the fifth, gives up double single, and then comes out of the game. Now, if you stopped watching when he came out of the game, I can't blame you, right? Like that's
Sure.
You're there for the skiing show. He's no longer pitching, but what I'm here for is what happened right afterwards. So, bullpen comes in, immediately gets 2 Ks.
Okay. Belly and Christopher Morel.
Right? Like that's heart of the Cubs lineup.
Yes.
We're going to K those 2 guys.
Hey, we got 2 dead. We we're
2 dead, and it was 2 dead first and come in first and second, nobody out. 2 punchies. We're feeling pretty good about ourselves here, right? Like now it's first and second, 2 outs.
Everything looks good. Then
we hit Ian Happ with a pitch. That's all right. Like it's not great, but it happens. Hit by pitches happen.
Sure.
Then, well, actually, let me say this first. We hit Ian Happ with the first pitch, the very first pitch.
Yeah, tough.
It's fine. We get it out of the way. Nico Horner comes up. 4-pitch walk. The bases were loaded at this point, so now a run scores. It's not great, right? We're walking in a run.
Nobody wants to see that.
The score when Skeens left this game was 6-1 in favor of Paul Skeens is the Pittsburgh Pirates. Okay, so that it is now 6-2 after the 4-pitch walk to Nico Horner.
Yep.
Next batter, another 4-pitch walk, 6-3. The next batter, any guesses? Yep, it's another 4-pitch walk. And now it's 6-4. And now we have another pitching change. Okay, so we get the first 2 outs real quick. Hit by pitch, 3 straight 4-pitch walks. Now that guy gets yanked. Guy comes in from the bullpen. Throws a strike. 5-pitch walk. Okay, so now it's 6-5.
And that was Josh Fleming, who's like, his guy's been around.
Then we have an infield single. Because, like, why not, right? Like, we have a ground ball that does not get out of the infield that has tied the game. So we went from 6-1 with 2 outs. We are now at 6-6, and only 1 ball's been put in play, and it didn't leave the infield. Then, because, like, I can only imagine someone is watching and is like, let's really bring it down. We have a rain delay. Not a long rain delay, but like a small rain delay.
Yeah.
So now Josh Fleming's out of the game.
Yeah.
Because we had a rain delay. New pitcher comes in. 4-pitch walk. And then a 5-pitch walk.
Oh.
And then we finally get a line out to end the inning.
Nick Madrigal of all people.
By Nick Madrigal, right? So if you are counting, they were up 6-1 when Paul Skeens left the game. It is now 8-6 Cubs. 1 ball has left the batter's box, and it was a ground ball to short that wound up not being converted into an out.
Yep.
Not one of these walks, more than 1 strike was thrown. All either 4 or 5 pitch walks. They walked in 5 runs.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, my bad. They walked in 6 runs. So the next time that your child's team does this, just remember, it happens.
Yeah, pros walk guys too. It happens. Shout out to the guy that like added me about this. So, like somehow it's my fault or our fault. Like, I don't know. It's been Blocktober came early this year, and yeah.
I am so glad that I didn't turn off the game after Skeens left.
And I think the dumbest part of certain people's approach to this whole conversation is the presumption that just because anybody, and I do mean anybody, is focusing on velocity development, that it means that they're ignoring the application of that velocity.
Right.
Like who's doing that? You know? Like who's doing that? And again,
I was gonna say it would have been a fun thing to look up the velos of those.
Oh, I did. I mean, there's some big numbers there, but there are also some low 9s too.
Yeah, right.
Like it was everything. It's Josh Fleming, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't throw crazy hard.
No.
And this presumption that like, well, it's our fault, or it's Florida Baseball Ranch's fault, or it's Texas Baseball Ranch's fault, or it's Eric Cressy's fault that velocity has gone up, and therefore effectiveness of pitchers has gone down. It's like, well, look, it's not like nobody ever walked ever. I mean, I guess we could get into this conversation, but like global walk rate. But then you got to unpack changes to the strike zone. You got to unpack approaches of hitters. You got to unpack like a lot of stuff that's in the mix about context there.
Yeah, I mean, umpires are better than I know people complain about umpiring, and I know Angel Hernandez is a
Still
man who
exists.
But
broadly,
go back and watch any game from like the 70s or 80s.
Yeah,
you got balls 8 inches
off
the plate that are getting called a strike.
I mean, is it the Levon Hernandez game where the zone is just
a ridiculous zone, right? Like, yeah, all the time.
Yeah. And again, we've talked about the Sato principle, the speed accuracy trade-off here. Like that's a thing. Yeah. Consider why people have to make that trade-off, because if some of these pitches, that are low to, or maybe let's say mid to high 8s instead of low to mid and high 9s, batters are just going to piss on them.
Right.
Like nobody's keeping a job with like an ERA of 12.
Nope. But you might with like a 25% walk rate.
Like for real. Yeah. Like that's just
100%.
That's just what it is.
Right.
And we've already had the revelation in the NBA because people figured out that they could count and 3 is greater than 2. Does it suck to give up walks? Yes. Is anybody intending to do that? No. Is it a cost? Yeah. It's just going to be a cost.
I mean, the reliever that's got the ridiculously high walk rate, nobody's going to be thrilled when he comes into the game, but he's going to come into the game and they're going to give him a runway to work out the control problems.
Yep.
If you throw 87, you don't get a runway to work on anything when they're hitting your balls all over the place.
Correct. And that's just the raw, unvarnished reality of competition in the Major League Baseball level. And it's like, we've seen Skeens
at any level. Well,
yeah, you're right.
You got kids that don't throw it as hard on my team.
Yeah.
They're not going to pitch as much because you may be a way better strike thrower than some of my guys who throw 5 miles an hour harder than you. But I'd rather take my shot with this guy and hope he throws strikes than know that you're going to kind of get knocked around.
Yeah.
And depending on the situation, I don't really want to give up barrels all over the field.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's not like anyone is suggesting that they shouldn't try to attack the zone, right? It's not like anyone is suggesting that pitchers shouldn't trust their defenses, right? And approach and attack literally in and around the zone in consideration. But that doesn't going to change the fact that the strikeout is the ideal outcome.
Right.
The least positive thing that can happen to the hitter is when they strike out. So you're going to optimize for that condition.
Mm-hmm.
And in some point, it means you're going to have a little bit of a tolerance for some walks. Is it great? No. Does anybody want that to happen? No. Would you be willing to turn the slider down on that if it meant that you're going to give up 4 extra base hits a game? No one's going to make that trade.
No,
literally no one's going to make that trade.
But if you look at the summary of that game and close your eyes, you can hear someone yelling, "Just throw strikes."
I can hear it now. I can hear it now. And again, the only thing I could point you towards in the truth of this approach, which is you have to tolerate some walks you're going to make that trade to amplify the amount of net positive for your pitchers and the amount of beneficial experiences a hitter is going to end up having. Is Skeens got hit? He got hit a little bit. I can't think of anybody that looks grosser at the collegiate level than that dude. Dominated in the minors.
Yeah.
Oh, and Seiya Suzuki is going to bang you. He's going to bang it out a little bit on you. That's how good these guys are.
That's how good they are.
That's how good the competition is.
Right.
It's not your postman anymore.
Right.
There aren't those guys.
Yeah.
You're going to get beat around if you don't accept the fact that you're just going to have to make that trade off in order to optimize for the best potential competition result. And that's the thing that's going to happen. in the big leagues. You should probably have the same amount of tolerance for your youth team because, again, like, what's the intention if not to get good at moving fast?
Yeah. And I mean, I said it. That's 3 different pitchers.
Yeah.
Who walked 6 guys.
And not all flamethrowers.
Not all flamethrowers, 3 different types, 3 like variants of like, hey, one of these guys is going to throw strikes today, right? Like sometimes the answer to that question is no.
Yeah.
Where like you have 3 like big league quality pitchers back to back to back and they all don't have it today.
Yep.
Like you said with potentially David Wells and Trevor Hoffman. Like, so are there days where the best youth pitcher is not going to have it?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, it's going to happen way more frequently than the days they have it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. A lot of this is just like, well, why don't they just be like Greg Maddux? Like, that's just you should just be like one of the best that ever did it. And like, yeah, is this a wishing contest? Like,
this is once again my plea for Greg Maddux to come out and like correct everybody else. He knows better.
Oh, and he has. I mean, he's given recent interviews where he's just like, yeah, like I threw hard.
He threw very hard.
Threw very hard.
Yeah. The first line of his scouting report, which has been circulated 1 million times, is hard thrower. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was.
Yeah.
You know who else was a hard thrower but could not throw strikes? Randy Johnson.
Yeah.
For a long time, could not throw strikes. And then because development's not linear, it clicked.
Yeah. Yeah. So, look, I'm not trying to equate Noah Corey to Randy Johnson. Definitely not doing that. If Noah goes out and walks
similar build.
I know. If Noah goes out and walks some guys this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
When?
Yeah. When he does, like, okay. Do I want Noah to have a sense of the approach to competition where, again, he does trust his defense. He doesn't feel like he needs to overpower every single hitter, and he approaches it in consideration so that he tries to live in the zone and like in attack there, as opposed to whatever the opposite of that would be. Like, yeah, I do, because I think we know what it looks like when you have like the 13-year-olds who are on the mound and the approach is like, I'm trying to PR like I'm in the gym.
Yeah.
Like I know what, we know what that looks like too.
Well, and the lower levels of baseball you get to, down to youth, like high school and youth, basically, kids are afraid of velocity. So if they see a kid, like just go stand near a team of kids and listen to what they say as they watch the opposing pitcher warm up. If they see a kid who is firm, their perception changes.
I've seen it.
Approach changes, everything changes.
I've seen it as a dad where like, cause I'm the pocket radar psychopath. Right. And like club championships last year, one of the games that Colby was pitching and he was like 74, 75, I think at the time. And he threw a slider that was like 60, 68, 69 ish, I think. And I just, because I was just trying to make sure, because I know where our kids are.
Right.
Went back there, got some samples, and like the moment that I kind of came out there with the pocket radar, there's like 2 or 3, 12, 13, 14-year-olds gathering around, and there's a couple more trickling, and they're like, how hard's he throwing? How hard's he throwing? How hard? They get they get rattled.
And then oftentimes what happens, especially if you're, back end of the lineup, you're hoping you're going to get walked.
Yep.
And now you've turned it into, I bet that you throw 4 balls before you throw 3 strikes.
Yep. And that's
for a youth player, that's a reasonable bet.
Yeah.
If you stand up there if you go through like a 9-person lineup and not one of those kids swings, you're probably walking at least 4 of those kids.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
right.
In play.
Nobody swung. You might have thrown 60% strikes. Because maybe you you struck out a bunch of the other kids on 3 pitches.
Yeah.
You're probably going to at least throw 4 balls to a kid before you throw 3 strikes a few times through that lineup. And so is that bad that you went like 3 innings, 6 punchies, but you walked 4? Is that supposed to be bad?
I'll take that 10 times out of 10.
Right? And like that's walks at the youth level are a lot of times. Because whether it's the coach literally telling the kids to take until they get to 2 strikes, which we have seen so many times, or the kids just like having a fear or not having the confidence that they can do damage on the pitch that they're seeing. A lot of times the walks is just because we're talking percentages here.
And at the end of the day, if we're talking about the way that parents or coaches communicate like the opportunity for learning in youth baseball, the reason that stuff drives me like personally insane is it's the conversation that I had with D this year about like he struggled as a varsity hitter. I think we talked about this a couple episodes ago, but I'll regurgitate this point. What I said to him is like contextually about how it went is like if he would just played JV this year, he would have never seen somebody throwing 86, 87. He wouldn't have seen what that problem looks like and what it was like to try to succeed against that problem. So as a coach, if I'm telling my kids, hey, it's like it's a perpetual red light. If I'm never giving you the okay to swing, you're not learning how to solve the problem. And you're going to have to solve it eventually. Mm-hmm. So you're just kicking the can that at some point down the road, when it probably matters a little bit more, or maybe a lot more, you're actually going to have to try to solve that problem because nobody gave you the runway to try to solve it now, right? When it meant less. And man, if that's the way that we approach youth baseball, we're lost. I think we're completely lost. We're lost on the intention. So, yeah. Walks happen. No one likes them, but it's just a thing.
Yeah.
People aren't perfect. I'd love to just like transmit Greg Maddox's DNA into like every kid in America and just like everybody's going to throw strikes and they're never going to walk and they're going to have like a perfect command of like 4+ pitches. It's not that easy. It's not the wish. So it's not the wish Olympics. We're not playing that sport. We're playing baseball.
Correct.
You got anything else?
I don't.
Yeah, I got nothing else.
I don't.
Okay, so to recap, Driveline Academy Flex, it's a thing now. You can go to drivelinebaseball.com, support at drivelinebaseball.com, 425-523-4030. Get all the info you can. I did have somebody ask about like the difference in the big boy assessment versus flex. And for me, I think the simplest way to communicate that is just like the biomechanics assessment that we're getting with flex is very much oriented at the lowest hanging fruit that you have right now. Could we talk about, angular velocities of different joints and other stuff in the throw for your 9 through 18-year-old? Sure. Is that going to be definitively applicable to like the next 30, 60, 90 days of their life? Probably not.
Most likely not.
And especially with the way that we're going to attack it, which is just like the point of the assessment is to give you the feedback about the drill stuff that you need to focus on.
Yeah.
How you can actually make this actionable. Because again, like I've been looking at biomech reports on my kid since he was 8. The best signal I got out of any of those when we got drill scores. It's like, oh, this is where your stuff is right now. Here's the drills. This is how good or bad it is. And here are the drills that you're going to want to do in order to improve that stuff. That's what we have with Driveline Academy Flex, which is the 6-month commitment thing, both in person in the gym and in home, or with your team, whatever configuration you want to do. There's the snapshot as well, which is just come in, one stop, 90-minute assessment, plus the meeting with the trainer, plus 30 days of flex. Just trying to break down the walls and get more people in here.
I mean, obviously the vast majority of people are individual athletes.
Yes.
But
bring
your whole team in here. There are bulk discounts available. So if you bring if you want to get your entire team snapshotted to see like where everybody stands, if you're listening to this, probably not, but maybe you think we are wrong and you train athletes better than we do. Come in, get a snapshot, train your athletes, get another snapshot and see if you're right.
Man, I want to pop off and say something like wild, but
it's a thing you can do.
Yep.
Or you can just, get your whole team in here for some training and see what that looks like. The other thing that I do want to throw out there, because I don't think we've done enough of this, it is also for softball players.
Yeah,
if you are a fast pitch softball player, come on down. We will do the markerless motion capture. We still will not be able to help a ton with underhand throwing, but overhand throwing is pretty important in softball too.
Yep.
And hitting good.
Yep.
Good for softball being a good hitter. So we're here for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just want more softball players in the data set, period.
Yeah, for sure.
And, and if we get, 12 to 18 months down the road here and we could have a collection of, I don't know, 11 to 14 softball players that we could actually like put together as a team, I wouldn't be mad about that either.
Yeah, and if you come in for a snapshot, I am more than positive that we will let you throw underhand in the mocap lab.
Yeah, we just don't know yet.
Yeah, we need more data collections.
Yeah,
we need more to kind of see what we're looking at. So
yep, for sure. And because it's the season, evals for next year's teams are going to be a thing that's kind of like going right now. We're not currently planning on doing like the big tryout day.
Nope. Reach out to us at support@drivelinebaseball.com if you're interested in joining one of our teams, and you will be contacted shortly with a time to come on down.
Yep. Or if you're happy with your current team, you want to train with data, you want to train with insight, that's what Flex and the Snapshot are for.
100%.
Thank you guys as per usual for the likes, subscribes, and notifications. Reminder that the YouTube stuff is now at Driveline Youth on YouTube, not on the old Driveline OG YouTube. So you can find us there. If you can do the likes and subscribe stuff over on the YouTube stuff, that would be hugely appreciated. If you can do that on iTunes to downvote the comments from people that early on were saying that we were too opinionated about baseball, I wouldn't be mad about that either. We're well over 125,000 listens on the pod, so thank you guys for being a part of this thing. We'll keep it pushing. We'll catch you next time.